let us come to the tetrahedral case. How d orbitals split into two groups when the ligands approach in a tetrahedral environment. We have already seen the octahedral case. Now let us come to the tetrahedral case. Now first let me tell you, suppose if in the center of this room there is the nucleus of the central midline. Now all the d orbitals, all the 5 d orbitals, 18 lobes are oriented, 6 pointed towards faces. Then the rest 12 pointed towards edge centers. Now this setup is fixed. Whether the ligands approach in an octahedral environment or tetrahedral or scalar planar, no matter, but d orbital's orientation does not change. So you can fix that arrangement, you can fix that imagination in your minds, keep it like that. Now ligands are coming, ligands are approaching central midline to form a tetrahedral complex. Okay. When they approach in an octahedral environment, they approached along the face centers. One from this face center from outside, one from that face center backside, 2 from sides, and 2 from above and below. So now if they want to form tetrahedral complex, then how do they approach? Just imagine, all of you, how can you imagine a tetrahedron in a cube? How can you imagine an octahedron in a cube? Face centers. You join all the face centers with the center of the cube, you will get an octahedron, very simple. Now similarly, how do you get a tetrahedron in a cube? You take 4 corners. Suppose you take this corner. Then you take the face diagonally opposite corner. Then you take that corner. Then you take face diagonally opposite corner. That means above you have taken these 2 corners on the ceiling, and in the floor you take these 2 corners. So 2 face diagonals which are orthogonal to each other. Now the corners which are these 2 face diagonals, they terminate at the corners, and you take 4 corners. The surrounding atoms, the ligands are at those 4 corners, and the central atom or the central midline is at the center of this classroom. So even a tetrahedron can be imagined in a cube. We are fortunate enough. You can imagine the tetrahedron, the tetrahedral orbital splitting everything in the room again. So the entire CFT can be visualized in the room, if you take that room roughly to be cubical. Okay. Now, if 4 ligands approach from the corners, one from this corner, second from that corner, face diagonally opposite, third from this corner and fourth from that corner, again face diagonally opposite. So on the floor it is like this, and on the ceiling it is like this. So orthogonal. Okay, now which d orbital is repelled to greater extent? Okay. Now let us see. So here crystal field splitting. In tetrahedral case. Now, our approach is similar. First we imagine that the central midline is isolated, not surrounded by any ligand. Then we imagine that the ligands approach the central midline in a spherically symmetrical environment. This is our hypothetical step. And ultimately we come to the actual step in which the ligands approach the central midline in a tetrahedral environment, pointed in fixed 4 directions. Okay. So when the central metal ion is isolated, these 5 d orbitals are degenerate. When 4 ligands approach the central metal ion in a spherically symmetrical environment, then all the 5 d orbitals are repelled to the same extent. Then there is reorientation, redistribution of electron density. Now the entire electron density, 4 negative charges. If you take 4 Cl minus ions, the 4 negative charges will be redirected, reoriented. Now they are pointed towards corners, 4 corners, above 2, below 2. Okay. Then the splitting happens. Okay. Now let us see how the splitting happens. Listen to me very carefully. One ligand is coming from this corner, and we have one lobe from pointing towards this phase center. If you remember, this is the x-axis, and this is the y-axis. This is the z-axis. Above and below z, to your sides y-axis, and in front of you and at the back x-axis. So the lobe which is pointed towards this phase center is the lobe of dx square y square. The lobe which is pointed towards that edge center, that lobe is of dxy orbital. Now the ligand is coming from that corner. Now you just mathematically you analyze and decide the incoming ligand is nearer to this lobe or that lobe. The lobe which is pointed towards the phase center and the lobe which is pointed towards the edge center. Obviously the ligand is closer to that lobe. The lobe which is pointing towards the edge center, not phase center. Now let me prove that. Okay, suppose you take the face, one of the faces of the cube like this. One of the faces of the cube. Now this is the face. Okay, now face center, the lobe of dx square y square is pointing towards that face center. And the lobe of dxy is pointed towards the edge center, and that will be the edge for a cube. I am showing you only one face, one of the 6 faces of the cube. Okay. Now the ligand is approaching from this direction. The circle stands for ligand. Now the distance between the center of the ligand and the lobe which is pointed towards the edge center is a by 2, where a is the side length of this cube, this square. So a by 2, exactly half of that. Now the distance between the center of the ligand and this particular lobe, and this lobe is of dx square y square, and that is a by root 2. Every one of you knows this. Distance between corner and edge center, a by 2. Distance between corner and face center, a by root 2. And which is greater? Which is greater? Obviously this is greater and this is smaller. So now, and one more ligand is approaching from that corner, third ligand from this corner, fourth ligand from this corner. So now the situation is exactly opposite to that of the octahedral environment. There the lobes which are pointed towards the faces, they were repelled to greater extent. Now the lobes which are pointed towards the edge centers, now they are getting repelled to greater extent, because the distance between the ligand and the lobe is smaller. So what happens now is, two orbitals are lowered in energy, but not energy of these two orbitals is not lower than the orbitals of the isolated gaseous atom, isolated metal ion. No, that is not the case. That is wrong. Okay, lowered, and energy of the three orbitals is raised. Exactly opposite. Now we call this as T2 orbitals. Now we don't use G, and these are called as E orbitals. Here also we don't use E. Actually G stands for Zarad. And whenever we have a center of symmetry, we use that G. Suppose if you take octahedral shape, now tell me whether you have center of symmetry or not in an octahedral environment. Yes. From the center you come here, this side, back side, same ligands. To your sides, left, right, above and below. Yes, we have center of symmetry. But can you have center of symmetry in tetrahedron? No way, it is not possible. Center of symmetry in tetrahedron is not possible. So we don't use G here, but otherwise these orbitals are dxy, dxz, and dyz. And these orbitals are dx square y square. Now these two orbitals are stabilized in comparison to the other three orbitals, and dz square. Now this particular difference between those two sets, now it is called as delta T, and you know T stands for tetrahedron. Now here this set is stabilized by 3 by 5, minus 3 by 5. So it is minus 3 by 5 delta T. And these orbitals are destabilized by 2 upon 5 delta T. Now this is the splitting pattern in tetrahedral complexes. Two orbitals are stabilized with respect to this level, not with respect to this level. All of you keep this in mind. And three orbitals are destabilized. The energy of those orbitals is raised. So actually here one important point, one relation between tetrahedron and octahedron case is, roughly speaking, according to a rough estimation, delta T is equal to 4 upon 9 into delta O. That means this gap in the case of tetrahedral complexes is actually smaller when compared to octahedral cases. And obviously logically it should be smaller, although exact mathematical relation that I am not deriving, I am not going into that. But logically speaking, delta T must be smaller than delta O, because in the case of octahedral complexes, 6 ligands approach, so repulsion is obviously greater. And one more thing, the ligands approach directly towards the lobe. See, the lobe of the dx square y square is pointed towards the phase center, and ligand approach directly towards the phase center from outside. So two things are there. One is more number of ligands approach central metal ion in the case of octahedral complex, and ligands approach directly in the direction of the lobes. But in tetrahedron, number of ligands is lesser. Actually it is only 4, and ligands are not approaching directly towards any lobe. See, one type of lobe is towards phase center, another type of lobe is towards corner, edge center, but ligand is coming towards corner. So it is not directly coming in the direction of any of the lobes. So repulsion is naturally lesser. There is no doubt about that. So all of you remember, roughly it is 4 upon 9 times delta O. And this is the reason why in tetrahedral complexes you don't find any pairing. Generally, there is no pairing generally. There may be exceptions. And you all know in which case the pairing happens. When the pairing energy is less than delta, that means the crystal field splitting. But here the crystal field splitting is lesser than in the case of delta O. So in maximum cases it happens that pairing energy is greater than delta T. So as a result electrons do not pair up. But there may be some exceptions to this. So this is the tetrahedral splitting. Now let us see square planar case. So why actually the main question here is for which we are all seeking an answer. And I have already raised that question 2 times before. In tetrahedron, the bond angle is 109.5 degree between any 2 ligands, and that is the maximum possible separation. If you want to put 4 things around a center, and if you want to keep the maximum distance between them, tetrahedron is the best arrangement. You cannot have better than that. You cannot have a better arrangement than that. But still, so many complexes are square planar. We have seen that. All palladium complexes, all platinum, all Au+3. In fact, all the 4D, 5D elements, they form square planar complexes as long as the coordination number is 4. So, huge number of square planar complexes are there. So, there is some stabilizing factor in those square planar complexes which is more than compensating for the difference in stability between tetrahedron and square planar. See, as far as repulsions are concerned, repulsions between ligands are concerned, tetrahedral is far better than square planar. But there may be some other advantage in square planar, and what is that? If you remember, valence bond theory did not show it to us. Valence bond theory is completely silent on that. Why some complexes are square planar when a better arrangement called tetrahedron is available? So now let us see how crystal field theory will answer this question. What is the traditional stabilizing factor which is more than compensating for that particular advantage, so-called advantage to tetrahedral shape? Okay. Suppose d orbital splitting, you can say crystal field splitting in square planar complexes. And a small point, actually it's very interesting discussion also. CFT says that, listen to me carefully, CFT says that square planar complex is just a case of octahedral complex. Square planar complex is not a different case, entirely different case. It is not an entirely different case. Okay, it is something related to octahedral. Now you see that point actually. You see the approach of CFT to a square planar complex. Now suppose if I draw a diagram of octahedral splitting. Now see, listen to me carefully. We have 5 d orbitals degenerate in an isolated gaseous atom. Now 6 ligands approach in a spherical environment. Now the actual octahedral environment, if you come to the actual octahedral environment, then the situation is like this, you know, all of you. The energy of 2 orbitals are energies raised, and the energies of the 3 orbitals lowered, stabilized. So this is octahedral environment, octahedral splitting. Now what I am doing is, I am removing this particular stage to simplify my diagram. So I am removing the part of isolated central metal ion. So now we have only the hypothetical spherical environment, and then we have the actual octahedral environment. Only 2 parts are there. So now what happens? Now listen to me carefully. In an octahedral shape, one ligand comes from here, second ligand comes from there, backside, one from this side, one from this side to your sides, one from above and one from below. Now this is octahedral. All bond lengths are same, all adjacent bond angles are same, 90 degree, perfectly symmetrical shape. Now just imagine the ligand which is above you and the ligand which is below you, the center of the ceiling, center of the floor. That means the ligands which are along our z-axis. We have taken this as x-axis, this as y-axis and this as z-axis. So the ligands along the z-axis, suppose if those two ligands move away from each other. Let us suppose, just imagine hypothetically, the ligand which is above us will go still upper and the ligand which is at the center of the floor, it is lowered further. That means these two ligands are moving away from each other. The rest four ligands are moving closer. Just imagine a situation like that. So this is what is called as tetragonal elongation. That means these four ligands, the two along the x-axis, the two along the y-axis are coming closer to each other, but the two along the z-axis are moving away from each other. So then what happens to this particular splitting diagram? Ligand along the z-axis, ligands along the z-axis, they are moving away from each other. They are moving away from the center. See, when they move away from each other, they also move away from the center, obviously. So out of these two orbitals, which orbital is stabilized? Obviously the dz square. Dz square is stabilized because ligands are moving away from these two lobes and repulsions will be lesser. The repulsions will decrease. And which orbital is destabilized? Dx square y square, because these four orbitals are moving towards each other, moving closer. So now these four lobes pointed towards this center, back to your left and right. Now these four lobes get repelled to greater attraction because ligands are coming closer and closer. Now these two are moving away from each other, farther and farther. They are moving. So the energy of the dz square is lowered and the energy of the dx square y square is raised. Now this is a new splitting. If the ligands along the z-axis move away from each other, of course these three orbitals will also split because ligands along the z-axis are moving away from each other. So as a result, out of the three orbitals dxy, whose lobes are in this plane, dyz, and the y-axis is this one for us and z-axis, so this plane, and the other one dxz, x and z, this one. So these three orbitals will also split. But for simplicity, I am not touching them because actually it won't affect our discussion. You will see it later. So let me keep it like this. Okay. Now, suppose if you completely remove the ligands along the z-axis. See, first what we did, we just moved them apart. We moved them away from each other. Now what we do? You still move it away from each other, still you increase the distance, then increase the distance. Now at one point of time they are completely removed from the complex. The bonds are completely broken. The extreme case of elongation. So now those two ligands are not part of this complex, only four are left. And what is the shape of this complex? Square planar. Now if that is the case, the energy of the dx square y square is still raised. And the energy of the dz square is still lowered. And I told you already, you need not worry about these three orbitals, although they are also affected. So we need not worry about that. Okay. Now this is the situation. Now you see. Now you listen to me very carefully. Suppose we have D8 case and strong field ligand. Strong ligand, that means where this splitting, crystal field splitting is very high, let us say. So what happens? First electron here, second here, third here. The case is strong ligand case. So electrons pair up first, then fourth, fifth, sixth, then here seventh, eighth. Now this energy is very high. So both these electrons will come here, because this is that means when you remove the two ligands along the z axis, now this is the new d orbital splitting. So those that were present in Eg set, now that will come to this orbital, because that is the lower energy orbital. So now it will be like this. And what is this orbital? dz square. And what is this orbital? dx square y square. Now this is the square planar case. Completely these two ligands are removed, and this d orbital gets vacant. And if you remember, all of you, in all the square planar complexes, the hybridization is dsp2. And now you see which orbital is used up in that hybridization. Whichever is vacant, that is dx square y square. And you recall, all of you, all the square planar complexes. Nickel NiCN taken 4 times minus 2. Platinum complexes, palladium complexes, Au plus 3 complexes, all the 4D, 5D elements whenever coordination number is 4. So 4D, 5D elements in the previous discussion we have already seen, their polarizing power is very high. So crystal field splitting is also very high, because crystal field splitting is directly proportional to polarizing power of the cation and polarizability of the anion, that is ligand. So either ligand is strong or the polarizing power of the central metal ion is greater in both cases, and when the configuration is D8 particularly, then this particular case is preferred. And you see, actually if it is octahedral, the 2 electrons are here. But if it is converted into square planar, that means the ligands from along the z-axis are completely removed. Now this is the new arrangement. Now definitely, yes, the complex is gaining stability. And I already told you, there is one advantage to tetrahedral shape. Repulsion between the surrounding atoms is lesser when compared to square planar. So if the gain in this energy more than compensates for that particular loss, yes, then what is the problem? The complex can go for square planar shape. That is the reason I told you, particularly when the ligand is strong or when the polarizing power of the central metal ion is greater. Only in those cases, the gain in this energy is able to more than compensate for that repulsions, because ligands are coming towards each other. When you move from tetrahedron to square planar, ligands move towards each other. So they repel each other to greater extent. So this gain in energy is compensating, more than compensating that particular loss. So ultimately the complex is square planar. Now same thing happened in D9 case also. In the D9 case, 2 electrons will be here and 1 electron is here. D9 case. And if the ligand is strong in that case, yes, there is a splitting, similar splitting. In octahedral complex is converted into square planar complex. And here 2 electrons will be here and 1 electron will be here. So there is a loss in the energy. That means the energy of 1 electron will be actually raised in the D9 case, because here 3 will be there, and out of those 3, 1 will go here. Only 2 will come here, obviously. So the energy of this electron will increase when compared to the octahedral environment. But 2 electrons, energy of the 2 electrons is lowered. And if the net energy gain is greater, yes, then the complex can go for square planar shape. And one example, D9 case. Actually, D8 strong ligand NiCN taken 4 times minus 2. D9 case, that is which we have seen is CuNH3 taken 4 times plus 2. A blue colored complex, very, very famous, which is square planar in shape. It is not tetrahedral, it is square planar. So in this case actually D9 case the situation I already made you imagine. Here 3 electrons will be there, 2 electrons will come here, 1 electron go there. So the d-stability of the 1 electron is more than compensated by the stabilizing effect of the 2 electrons. So ultimately the shape of the complex is square planar. So all of you please remember one thing, crystal field theory, it approaches square planar complexes. It imagines square planar complexes just as a case of octahedral case. In an octahedral case, if you remove 2 ligands completely from the z-axis, the resultant complex is square planar. And if you remove the ligands completely from the z-axis, there will be a new splitting pattern, and in that pattern there is a gain in energy. And as a result, the complex is ready to form square planar complexes. Now let us come to the last topic of complexes, stability of the complexes. Now it is a simple and small both topic. Suppose you take the example CuNH3 taken 4 times plus 2, overall charge is plus 2. So let us talk about this particular complex, a blue colored complex, and just now we have seen it is a square planar complex. Okay, you can imagine the formation of this complex in 4 different steps. So suppose if you take Cu plus 2 and it combines with 1 ammonia, and you will get CuNH3 plus 2. That means you can imagine that this complex is formed in consecutive 4 steps. So ammonia ligands come one after the other. Now next, this particular complex CuNH3 plus 2 combines with another ammonia to form CuNH3 taken twice. Now the resultant complex combines with another 3rd ammonia and you will get CuNH3 taken 3 times plus 2. And in the last step, the CuNH3 taken thrice plus 2 combines with another ammonia and you will get CuNH3 taken 4 times plus 2. Stepwise formation in 4 steps. Coordination number 4, 4 steps. If any complex's coordination number is 6, then 6 steps. If any complex's coordination number is 5, 5 steps. If the coordination number of the complex is only 2, 2 steps. One example is AgCN taken twice minus. Okay. Now, if you combine all these steps, all of you have this skill in chemical equilibrium. You add 2 or more reversible reactions. You will get the net reaction, and if you do that, then what will happen to the equilibrium constants? What is the relation between net equilibrium constant and individual equilibrium constants? You all know this. So I told you already, this topic is very simple. So let us say the equilibrium constant of this particular step is K1 and this is K2, this is K3 and this is K4. Now the overall reaction is Cu plus 2 plus 4 NH3, that gives Cu NH3 taken 4 times plus 2. Now if you call the overall equilibrium constant of overall reaction as Kf, some people also call it as beta. So obviously that is equal to K1 into K2 into K3 into K4. When you add the reversible reactions, their equilibrium constants multiply, and they multiply to give the overall equilibrium constant. Okay, so this is one thing. So the overall Kf stands for formation constant. Formation constant of the complex. So it is the overall equilibrium constant, which is also called as beta. Now one more thing here, it is something like dissociation of a polyprotic acid. Suppose for example H3PO4 is there. It first dissociates into H2PO4 minus plus H plus. Then second H plus comes out, then third H plus comes out. In 3 different steps phosphoric acid dissociates. Diprotic acids dissociate in 2 different steps, for example carbonic acid H2CO3. It is something like that. And you please recall, all of you, successive Ka values. If you take a polyprotic acid, what happens to successive Ka values? They go on decreasing or they go on increasing? They go on decreasing. Ka3 is always less than Ka2 and Ka2 is always less than Ka1. And here also K1 is greater than K2, which is greater than K3, which is in turn greater than K4. Obviously, here we have actually Cu plus 2, and at this stage there is no ligand, and one ammonia formed a bond. Now this complex, the resultant complex, does not have that much tendency to accept the second ammonia as Cu plus 2. So Cu plus 2 will have the highest tendency to accept the lone pair. But once one bond is formed, its lone pair acceptance will decrease, because negative charge develops. You all know in this complex the charges are, we have plus charge on ammonia and we have only plus 1 charge on copper, because during coordinate covalent bond formation charges are developed. Acceptor minus, donor plus. So Cu plus 2 is the acceptor, so its charge will decrease from plus 2 to plus 1, so its tendency to accept the lone pair will decrease. So the equilibrium constants will gradually decrease. So it is logical. So this is one point. And one more point is, now all of you see, suppose if you take Ni, H2O taken 6 times, plus 2. So this is one complex. Now when you treat this complex with ammonia, then this complex is converted into Ni, NH3 taken 6 times plus 2. And this reaction is very favorable. So one complex converted into another complex. And I told you actually during the discussion of this chapter, so many times I told you, it is very difficult to break the coordination entity. But in this example, and we have so many such examples in which the coordination entity is very easily broken. But please remember, in all such cases another complex is formed. Another complex which is more stable, that is formed. If you balance this reaction, then 6 water and here 6 ammonia. Now this particular reaction can be analyzed in a familiar way, which you can all understand. Now suppose see, Ni H2O taken 6 times plus 2. Now let us break this complex completely. So if you do that, then you will get Ni plus 2 plus 6 water. Now that Ni plus 2 combines with 6 ammonia to give Ni NH3 taken 6 times plus 2. And if you add these two reactions, then you will get the same net reaction. NiH2O taken 6 times plus 2 plus 6 ammonia, that gives NH3 taken 6 times plus 2 plus 6 water. Now for example, Kf of NiH2O taken 6 times plus 2. And on the other hand, if you take Kf of NH3 taken 6 times plus 2. Now all of you, can you guess which will be greater? Just logically, you approach that my question logically. Aqua complex and amine complex, ammonia complex. Everything else is same. Central metal ion is same, the charge unit is same, coordination number same, everything same. Only thing is that change in the nature of the ligand. In the first case, water is the ligand, and in the second case, ammonia is the ligand. So Kf of which complex will be greater? So without any doubt, ammonia complex, because ammonia is a strong ligand. Nitrogen is more polarizable than oxygen. So as a result, nickel nitrogen bond is stronger than nickel oxygen bond. So nickel ammonia complex is more stable. So formation constant will be greater. Now this is Kf of aqua complex. Let me write down simply in brackets only water. Now this is the Kf of ammonia complex. Of course, this is 1 upon Kf of water complex, because all of you see that reaction. Actually, the reverse of this will be Kf. So obviously the equilibrium constant of this will be 1 upon Kf, and the resultant equilibrium constant of this is equal to Kf of ammonia complex into 1 upon Kf of water complex. And we know Kf of water complex will be lesser and Kf of ammonia complex will be greater. So the net equilibrium constant will be greater than 1. So this reaction is favorable. So let me repeat the point which I told you at the beginning of this discussion. You will see so many examples in which coordination entity is broken. But in almost all such cases, you will see a new coordination entity is formed. So a less stable coordination entity is replaced with a more stable coordination entity. So you need not have any objection to that, because it is favorable. Net equilibrium constant is greater than 1, no doubt at all. Okay. So and 1 upon Kf. So here we got that, no, 1 upon Kf. That means the equilibrium constant of a reaction in which the complex actually breaks, not formed. It is called as instability complex. And Kf is also called as instability constant. And Kf is also called as stability constant, formation constant or stability constant. Now this is all about stability of the complexes.